Because it's gonna get, folks. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura. I am a 4th grade math and science teacher in the state of Florida. Today is Monday, June 21st. And so it's been a couple days since I've been out of school, and so I figured I'd come on, film a little video while things are still fresh in my brain. Today's topic, I want to talk about like departmentalization versus self-contained. Now that I've spent a full year in a departmentalized classroom, I wanted to just kind of talk about my thoughts, my feelings on it, and just kind of share like pros and cons of both. So I figured I'd start with departmentalization since that's fresh in my brain. So a little background, I started off the year being departmentalized in a 4-way switch. So I was only teaching math. About halfway into the school year, they decided to switch me to a partner teacher. So we just had one switch. So I started teaching math, science, and reading intervention. So I've had kind of both of the departmentalized sides. I know some people have done partner switches, some people have done where they just teach math or whatever subject. So I've had it both this year. So I can kind of touch a little bit on that as well. So my first thing that I want to say is a pro for departmentalization is definitely less planning on the teacher side. You do not have to plan for all the subject areas. In my case, I started off only having to plan for math, which is lovely. I planned one lesson and I taught that lesson 4 times. Yes, it did get very boring towards the end of the day, but there's ways to work around that. Now, when I did start teaching math, science, and reading intervention, it was a little bit more planning, but think of it like this way. If you're self-contained, you're having to plan for all subject areas. So it's still less planning on the teacher end than it would be if you were self-contained. Another big pro that I will say that I experienced this year in full was if you have a child with like major behavior issues or just like personality conflicts, it is a lot better to be departmentalized because you are only with that child for half the day or an hour a day, depending on what your situation is. But it's really nice in the fact that I felt like in years past when I was self-contained and I had a student with behavior issues, I would get burnt out every single day because of those behavior issues happening constantly throughout the day. So being departmentalized, you only have that child or children for half the day or whatever it is. So you're not as burnt out throughout the whole entire day. Another pro for the departmentalized is that you get really good at knowing your standards for that one subject area or 2 subject areas. Because you're only teaching those and you're teaching it twice, you really get to know what those issues are going to be for those kids. So like if you're teaching multiplication from that first class, you teach that lesson and it's almost like a practice lesson. Unfortunately for the first class, that's just what it is. And then you get to go to your second class, and those things that you may have messed up on or you saw that were misconceptions with your first class, you can kind of address those with your second class. So kind of cool, kind of a way to, I guess, address those issues head on in your classroom. So you get really good at teaching those standards and you get to know them really well. Now, there are some cons with departmentalization as well. So one of the big cons I noticed starting off the year was I had way too many kids to manage. When I was in that 4-way switch, I had 80+ kids in my class at one point in time. And I felt like it was so hard to know those kids' abilities. Yes, it was only having to know their math abilities, but there were so many of them that it was hard to keep them straight. And we started off virtual, so that's like a whole nother factor in there as well. So definitely it's very hard to manage every single kid, and I felt like it took me a very long time to get to know their abilities as mathematicians. Another con, obviously, is you are working with a partner teacher or partner teachers when you are departmentalized. So there is a lot more like planning on the outside end of things like coordinating meetings, coordinating parent conferences, things like that. You have to really be flexible with your schedule, so that way you all can work together to help those kids. So that's another con as well. And really having to have that communication with another teacher, and you have to be flexible on your schedule. So like I know personally, I like to have meetings in the morning before school. My partner teacher doesn't. She has her own children, so when she would come to school, she would get there right on time. I'm there an hour and a half before because that's who I am. And so our meetings would always have to be during like planning time or whatnot together, or I would have to work after school for meetings with her because that's just how her schedule worked, and so I had to be flexible on that. So it's a con in the sense of like, if you're not flexible, it's hard to work around, but if you're flexible, it's fine. And then obviously going along the lines of having so many kids, yes, you do have a lot more meetings. I remember when I had the 4-way switch, I was having meetings like every single week. I was having like 3 meetings because I had so many kids. I had all the kids with IEPs, I had all the kids with 504s, I had all the kids who are qualifying for IEPs and 504s. So I was having meetings every single day during my planning, after school, sometimes mornings as well. So it was a lot to coordinate. It was a lot of meetings. Hence why I have so much comp time that I was able to comp out of my teacher workday today. Now, obviously there are a lot more pros and cons when it comes to departmentalization, but I'm gonna flip over to the self-contained side just for like time-wise to keep the video moving. So I did teach self-contained for the first, I guess, 3-4 years. I've always been used to self-contained, so I have a lot more experience with this. So a major pro I saw in self-contained when I was teaching that is I felt like I knew all of my kids' abilities in all the subject areas. I knew who was strong in math, I knew who was strong in reading, I knew who was struggling in those areas, and I felt like I really got to know them really well, and I felt like I was very effective as a teacher because I just knew my kids. Another pro obviously is you spend so much time with those kids that you really bond with them as a class, and you kind of become this like close-knit family. So I didn't really see that this year. And again, it might be a factor of like, we started off virtual and kids were switched schedules and different classes throughout the year, but I didn't really see that as much. So yes, there were other factors this year, but we'll see how it goes next year, and we'll see if I get that same vibe. So that's definitely a pro of being self-contained, is you get that family vibe. You're with them for so long that you guys bond together. You guys bond over things outside of academics, which is like departmentalized. I didn't really see that. So another pro for self-contained is things are a lot more consistent because you are the only one setting those rules, those expectations for the kids. They get to know your personality and what you expect of them very well, so it carries throughout the day for the most part. Obviously, there's exceptions. With departmentalized, I found it a lot more challenging because of having a partner teacher or partner teachers. All of us had our own expectations. All of us have our own personalities. So when the kids would go from classroom to classroom, they were having to get to know each of our personalities. So they would do things that the partner teacher would want them to do, and something I wasn't okay with. And so we would have to have that whole communication of like, okay, well, that might happen in that classroom, but in my classroom, here's how we do it. So it's a lot of like training the kids when you're departmentalized, but when you're self-contained, they only have one set of expectations, and that's yours. So it makes it a lot easier in that sense. A con that I found with being self-contained is you having to plan all the subject areas. So it's a lot of time on the outside end of, okay, I have to plan reading, I have to plan writing, I have to plan math, I have to plan science, I have to plan social studies, I have to plan morning meeting. It is a lot of planning on the back end of things. That's just, there's not much to it other than that. Again, there are ways to work around that. You could be planning as a grade level and working together to plan those things. I wasn't the biggest fan of that at my old school last year. Not a big fan of the team planning because obviously I plan differently than everyone else. I teach differently than everyone else, but if that works for you, that's a way to get around that. Another con I just thought of for being self-contained obviously is kind of like the flip side of the behavior issues. If you do have a student who has major behavior issues, you are with them the whole entire day. You are the one who is managing those behaviors. You are the one who are teaching them how to correct those behaviors, what choices to choose instead of those behaviors. So it kind of all falls on you. So if you're down with that, you're down with that. If you're not, you're not. That is, in my opinion, a pretty major con to being self-contained. I'm probably going to get this question in the comments, so I figure I might as well answer it here. Which would you choose, self-contained or departmentalized? I this year had the choice of kind of like putting in my preferences at the end of the year. Teachers always get to do that, of like what grade level they want to go to whether they prefer to be self-contained or departmentalized or whatever. This year I requested to be in 4th grade. I decided to stay with departmentalized for another year. Me and my partner teacher, we worked pretty well together for the most part, so I wanted to give it another year and see how it goes and see if something has kind of changed. It's kind of like a little experiment for me in a way. I'm being a little scientist here, it's a social experiment to see which one I like better. In years past, I would say that I wanted to be departmentalized because of all the planning and all the behavior issues that I was dealing with every single day. But now that I see those things are kind of consistent across both, I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm gonna give it another year. I'll let you guys know. I am gonna be departmentalized again next year with my same partner teacher, 4th grade math, science, and reading intervention. So we'll see how it goes. All right, if you guys have any questions for me as far as departmentalization versus self-contained, feel free to leave those in the comments below. Let me know what you guys prefer to teach. I'd be curious to see if it's like an even split, or if some people like departmentalized or self-contained or whatever. I know that's like a very big debate in teaching these days, so I'm very curious to see what would win out here. So let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos this summer. I am planning to put out several videos, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when I do post, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.